Right, folks, you may have guessed that I actually quite like the little Xshot kickback. Basically because I made one fire ultra darts, and they're a lot of fun. They are very much a lot of fun. They're very simple. You know, just load the dart in, pull the thing back, point and pull the trigger. But then you also have this nice little tactile recoil action, which is quite fun. The only downside really is that the grips are a bit too small. That's the only negative I've ever found in one of these. You can modify them quite well. I mean, the ultra version hits at around about 95 FPS, and given that it's firing a larger diameter dart, that's pretty good. So when I discovered that they redid them as the Dino attack extinct, I was intrigued. So yeah, first things first, the grip. I can get all my fingers in. That's a good thing, and it still has the clicky, which is good. Not a big fan of that. Scope for painting very limited. I was hoping it'd be covered in like Dino scales or not, but it's a lot of checker plate effect. So I'm not going to worry about painting it today, to be honest, because it's chucking it down with rain. But what I want to see is what can I get out of it. Over here I got a 9K ion fire spring. That should fit. Well, might have to trim it down, we'll find out, but I'm going to crack it open. I'm going to take out the AR and the dart peg. I'm going to put the new spring in it, and I'm probably going to brass it, and then we will see. Stock, I believe this hits around about the 82 mark, so I'm not going to bother test firing it, chrono in it in a stock form. I'm just going to crack it open and see what is what. Yeah, nice and easy. Okay, so far I've taken the slide off, and it looks to be basically the same setup as the kickback. This I think wasn't hollow, so that's new. And they've also added a second clip on the shell. You had the one at the bottom which was there, so that's there, and then it looks like they've added an extra one in the middle, so that just adds to the fun of getting it off. It's actually there, sorry, not there, it's there. So that's an additional clip to worry about getting off, so just take care with those. I haven't noticed any difference in screw size. Basically I'll put a link in the description to the ultra build, because I believe I went a bit more in depth with disassembly there, so at least you can see it. I'm just going to take the rest of the screws out and butterfly it open. Okay, yeah, it's a kickback underneath. It's just got extra shell, so yeah. Again, be wary of the various springs, because obviously you've got a couple of springs for the recoil mechanism, trigger spring, and a couple of springs on the slide, so just be wary that they don't go wandering as you pop it open. But yeah, the internals, the plunger tube layout and the trigger layout, that's exactly like you get in the kickback, so that'll be easy. It looks to me like all the various pieces of shell do unclip, so if you did want to do a paint job on this, you've got some decent separation between the slide, the grip, the barrel, and so on. So paintwork on this could look really good. Again, the checker plating is not my favourite, but you know, you could come up with something impressive. So yeah, the main thing now is to take the AR out, which is actually surprisingly easy because that's your AR. Clip that trim that stub off, the AR falls out. That's it. Spring release, if I'm remembering correctly, spring change should be just as easy as well. Yep, the plunger head is screwed on, and then, you know, the one thing I will say is I'm going to reinforce this back wall where the spring will rest, because that tends to be a point that always breaks or weakens. But rather than slamming in a 2mm thick piece of plastic, I'm just going to get some thin aluminium plate and reinforce it with that, so I don't lose too much in the way of spring compression. So yeah, that's going to be easy enough. So the next time you see this, I'll have got a little piece of aluminium in there. Well, I think it's aluminium sheeting. It's like 0.5 millimeter thick, but it's not tin foil. But it's pretty good stuff. I'll have the spring changed, and I'll have this rebarreled with 1732 brass, because why not? So yeah, I mean, if you wanted to see how, like I say, I think I go into more depth on the for this one, so I'll link that in the description, so go and have a look, and I'm pretty sure somebody else has stripped one of them apart. But yeah, I'm gonna do all this and then show you this bit specifically. Alright folks, bad news. Basically, where they've saved plastic by trimming all this out and adding extra grooves and things of that nature, it just makes the blaster feel like it wants to break, which means you don't feel comfortable putting too big a spring in, which basically means that you put the minimum amount of spring in it and you only end up getting 91. So my advice would be save your pennies, because this currently is retailing at around about £6. You can get a couple of kickbacks for 7, give or take, in a twin pack, and then all you'd need to do is extend the grip on the kickback. The internals, it just feels stronger because this is one solid piece. There's none of this, and this is on both sides, so it just feels like when you're trying to put a spring in, the whole thing's flexing, and I just don't feel comfy. The Iron Fire spring was too narrow. It went over the plunger rod just fine, but where that gap was, where I reinforced it, it just slid through it. So you've got to be wary of what spring. I ended up going with the old Party Cannon spring. It's a good fit, but I ended up having to take about 5 coils off it just before I felt comfortable. So I would not recommend this one. I would literally get yourself one of these, because these work out cheaper. Like I say, this is currently on Amazon for I think about $5.99. These you can pick up for, like, you can get a twin pack for about £7 or £8. So twice, a couple of extra quid, you get double the blaster. These are just as good. The internals are a little bit more reliable. The shell is more reliable because it is pretty solid. The only thing I would say is reinforce the 2 pegs at the back of the plunger tube, and you'll feel a little more comfortable putting a big spring in it. I mean, I have brassed this for normal darts, normal size. I put an extra spring in it and I'm getting less than I did on my Ultra. That is disappointing. So do not recommend the Dino Attack Extinct. Get a couple of these. Simple as. That's my recommendation. And then you can, hack the grip off, because there's nothing in the grip. So you could hack it off and maybe mould a Maverick grip onto it or something like that, because they're slightly bigger and they're a lot more comfortable. Literally the only fault I ever have with this blaster is that it's just a bit too small on the grip. Other than that, it's one of the nicest things I've ever used. And it takes a pretty good upgrade. I mean, like I say, 95 FPS for something this size is nothing to be sniffed at. And again, 90 FPS out of this, fantastic, but it should be able to take more, and it's just this body flexing. I just don't trust it. So yeah, that's my recommendation. Don't get an Extinct, get a couple of kickbacks. See you later.